Hi guys, it's Little Gem from Little Gem's Adventures. Today I'm going to be talking you through the activities that I did around Australia. First up, we went to Sydney. We stayed a little bit further out of Sydney and got an Airbnb in a place called Tarrant Point, and this is where all of the family stayed. Around this area there was a really lovely beach called Cronulla Beach. In Sydney, obviously you have the Sydney Harbour Bridge, you have the Sydney Opera House, you have Sydney Harbour Cruises, you have loads of food, you have loads of nightlife, you have street performances in some of the evenings as well, and obviously we had New Year's. This was absolutely amazing, and I have to say it is a must do. If you can go to Sydney and spend New Year's there, then I highly recommend. We went to the Barangaroo Reserve, which really was not that expensive at all, and we just sat there. There was live music, there was entertainment, and you could just sit with your blankets and take food in as well, which was really lovely. It had a fantastic view of the fireworks, and you could also see the Harbour Bridge. You couldn't quite see the Opera House, but I think it was pretty enough. We also went for a walk from Coogee Beach to Bondi Beach. If you're going to walk Coogee Beach to Bondi Beach, then I'd recommend parking at Coogee because that has more free parking than Bondi. Next up, we did a Tasmania tour. We did a 6-day tour in Tasmania, which actually was not originally planned, and that is a must do. Tasmania was absolutely fantastic. It had exceptional views, and it was a really good experience just being able to go around with the same group of people around Tasmania. We went to Port Macquarie, Newcastle and Coffs Harbour, and these were just stop off places so that we didn't have to drive straight from Sydney all the way to Byron Bay. In Port Macquarie there was actually a really nice koala hospital, and we also did a coastal walk. Newcastle we just walked around the pier a little bit, and Coffs Harbour we went to the botanical gardens and also went to the beach. Next up was Byron Bay. I personally didn't like Byron Bay that much, but it might just be because of where we were staying. Everyone that I know who stayed at hostels like the YHA really enjoyed Byron Bay and thought that it was lovely, but I personally didn't enjoy Byron Bay as much as I thought I would. There were really good street performances every night in Byron Bay, and there was quite good nightlife. There was also a market whilst we were there. We went dolphin kayaking, and there's also a really nice lighthouse trail. I have to admit we didn't do the whole trail because it was so hot when we were there, but loads of people recommended it, and actually a lot of people went for sunrise because that is one of the first places that has sunrise in Australia. Next up, Gold Coast. I absolutely loved Gold Coast. Obviously it's very good for surfing, it being called Surfers Paradise. It does have really good nightlife apparently, but we didn't go. One thing that I would recommend is the Springbrook National Park. This again was a really nice tour that we went on, but you don't necessarily have to go on a tour, you can just explore around it in a car. Next up, Brisbane. We unfortunately didn't manage to do lots in Brisbane because 2 days it was really hot and 2 days it was really rainy. But we did manage to go to South Bank, which has really nice food and drink areas and also an outside pool. The nightlife looked really good, and we also went to an escape room. Whilst we were in Brisbane we also went to Australia Zoo, and we actually saw Bindi Owen. Next up, Noosa. Noosa again was incredibly humid when we were there, but we did go to the Noosa Heads National Park. You should explore around Hastings Street if you like a little bit of shopping, and also go to the Noosa Everglades. Fraser Island. We went to Fraser Island from Hervey Bay. We did the Cool Dingoes tour, which is actually a bus tour, but you can get tag-along tours where you drive yourself and just tag along. But on our Cool Dingoes tour we had a big pink bus which was a 4-wheel drive, so we didn't have to do any driving and we stayed in lodges. We also had breakfast included, which was a buffet breakfast and a buffet dinner as well, and also we had lunch as well. We didn't have to do any of the cooking or any of the cleaning. Lake Mackenzie is a definite must there. We also went to Lake Wabi, the Maheno Shipwreck and Eli Creek. Next up we went to Bundaberg, and this is where we did a Bundaberg tour. This is where we found out that our hometown is actually home to Bundaberg's yeast. We also went on a turtle tour where we were taken out to help little hatchling baby turtles into the sea. That was such a lovely experience. You can't film all of it, but you just have to do it, and you got to stroke the little turtles and follow them out and make sure that they had a safe trip to the sea. Agnes Water or 1770. I would highly recommend staying at the YHA there. It was probably one of my favourite hostels in Australia, and the manager was just absolutely fantastic. They had their own really cheap tours there, where we actually went on a sunset tour. We explored a lot of 1770 and actually learned about 1770 on this trip. We had really cheap surfboard hire. It was just a nice stop off area for a little while just to chill out. Next up was Rockhampton. Again, this is just a place that we stopped off at to break up the travel. We didn't do loads here because this is where it was really stormy, but we did actually manage to go to the Botanical Gardens, which has a free zoo there, and there was a little baby chimpanzee. The Whitsundays. Now, we went from Whitsundays from Airlie Beach. Airlie was quite nice because it had a lagoon that you could go in and chill out, and it had loads of little shops there as well. And Airlie is also where we had the after party for our Whitsundays boat party. It didn't have loads of nightlife, but it was fun. Whitsundays, we actually went with the Atlantic Clipper, which is known for being the party boat. I have to admit, our group was actually very tame, but we had a dress-up party one of the nights. It had a slip-and slide, it had an inflatable slide, and it had a jump-off platform as well. And obviously you snorkeled around the Whitsundays and went to Whitehaven Beach. Unfortunately, Whitehaven Beach wasn't as white as it is meant to be, and the sea is meant to have these sort of turquoise swells, but because there was a cyclone, it was grey. We then went over to Magnetic Island from Townsville. We actually stayed a night in Townsville either side of Magnetic Island, but we didn't realise that you could literally get off the bus and then straight onto a ferry over to Magnetic Island, so you don't even really need to stay at Townsville. But Magnetic Island, we hired out a Jeep. This is typically where people hire out the Barbie cars, but we decided to hire out a Jeep so that we could do some four-wheel drive. We went to the forts, which is where some koalas are, and we went to Florence Bay to do some snorkeling. And we also fed some wild wallabies, and we wanted to go to the west. This is where a lovely reef is with loads of fish and really clear waters, but unfortunately, because there had been a cyclone, there had been landslides on the four-wheel drive area, so we weren't allowed to drive there. Cairns. So for some unknown reason, whilst I was recording, I forgot to mention that we went to Mission Beach before we went to Cairns. This is where I did my second skydive of our 6-month trip, and this was really good because you could see the Great Barrier Reef from a distance, and you could see the sea and the beach, and obviously you have the famous beach landing in Mission Beach too. Also, just a few hundred metres from the landing site, we found this totally Instagrammable tree. Cairns. There is a lot to do in Cairns. There is the lagoon. There is quite a lot of nightlife in Cairns, one of which is Gilligan's, which is actually a hostel, but it has a club in it as well, and that is where most people go clubbing. But there are also lots of other pubs that hold different events. We went to the Daintree Forest with an Uncle Brian's tour, which was absolutely fantastic because you can swim in the oldest rainforest in the world. We also saw some wild cassowaries and we saw wild crocodiles. We also went on another tour, which is the Waterfalls tour. We saw Mila Mila Falls, which is the falls where you do a typical hair flick in front of the waterfalls, and we also slid down at Josephine Falls, which was basically like a slip and slide but on a waterfall. And also we went to the Great Barrier Reef to do some snorkeling. We also went over to Fitzroy Island to do some snorkeling because this is where lots of sea turtles are, but because of the cyclone it wasn't the clearest place, but we did see a turtle. And Uluru. I know that COVID cut our trip short, but I'm actually really happy that we ended our trip on the Uluru tour. It was absolutely fantastic to see Ayers Rock. We also hiked up Katachuta and hiked up the Kings Canyon. We slept under the stars in our swag bags, and oh my goodness, the stars were amazing in Uluru. And I managed to take some pictures, but it just didn't quite do it justice. You just have to see it with your own eyes. We very briefly stopped in Melbourne, but I can't say too much about it because we didn't spend much time there because we had to leave because of COVID. And unfortunately we never actually got to see Perth, but I'll just have to go back someday. That is all I have for you for now. I hope you have enjoyed the video. I hope I have helped you a little bit with planning what you can do around Australia, and it's bye for now.